Hello and welcome to my part two of going through my favorite songs from the 1980s. I will go ahead and link part one in a card right here. And yeah, this is just a continuing series that I've done with some other decades in a little bit of a different format because, as I said in my first video, the 80s were not a decade that I actually lived through. So these are just some songs that I really love from this decade. I'm not ranking them from like 1 to 10. I'm just going to go through them, list them by year. So I'll start with 85, go to 86, 87, 88, 89. And this is just an appreciation for 80s music because I really feel like the era of 1980s music, whether it was pop, hip hop, R&B, definitely rock, was just so big and bold. Like the music was getting more and more extravagant. The emotions were huge. And I just felt like music was in such a joyous phase through the 80s that I wanted to take some time and talk about some of my favorite songs from the 1980s. And we'll go ahead and start with the year 1985. 1985, I've got 3 songs for this year, which is not surprising because in my last video, I felt like 83 and 84 had the most songs. So something about those mid 80s, just a lot of solid music was going down. And we're going to start with one that I feel like might surprise some people, but this is You Spin Me Round Like a Record by Dead or Alive. I got to know this song from the movie The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore that was released in the 90s. I grew up watching that movie a ton. Like it was one of those movies that my family repeat watched, and it's probably one of the very few movies I feel like I could quote pretty much the whole way through. And that movie opens with that song. So it immediately has like a nostalgia aspect for me. But in general, it's just so 80s. Like that song screams 80s sounds when it comes to pop. Even how Dead or Alive looked for that song, big hair, big sounds, lots of theatrics involved. It's just pure fun. Now, this is a song that I have genuinely loved listening to for many, many years, and that is Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. Obviously, people know this from The Breakfast Club. It's like the iconic ending scene. And fun fact, I've actually never seen that movie in its entirety. I've only seen very small clips. And so I just personally have found the song, heard it through the years, and have listened to it a ton on my own. I just think it's a really beautiful track. I think the music production actually is what I love most on that because it still sounds like 80s, but I wouldn't say it's in the same capacity as like the last track that I mentioned was. It feels a bit more timeless and a bit dreamy too, which is probably why I've enjoyed listening to it on my own. Okay, last one for 85. This was the first song I wrote down for this video because it was just an absolute no-brainer, and that is a-ha's Take On Me. Take On Me, started loving it really fully probably about 10 or so years ago when it featured on a Just Dance game. There was a song in my last video that also Just Dance made me get to know, but I had known Take On Me prior to that. But that video game made me realize just how much joy that song made me feel. So if I ever want to be put in a good mood, or if I am like on a run, whatever it may be, it is truly one of my all-time pick-me-up songs. And I don't think there's anything wrong with listening to it and trying to belt out the chorus. Might you make some people mad? Absolutely. But I mean, it's what it's there for, I feel like. So next we're on to 1986, and this song was also one of my no-brainers, and that is It's Tricky by Run DMC. I probably know like all the lyrics to this song. Like that's how much I have listened to this song in my life. It's a really fun hip hop song, and I love that the production of it, music-wise, is relatively stripped back. It's not as aggressive production style as like so much of what pop music was in the 80s. It's definitely way more stripped back and instead really focusing on the delivery from the members of Run DMC. I don't know a ton of hip hop from the 80s, but that song is so well known. Run DMC is so well known that I can't help but think they must have influenced future hip hop artists that came after them because of just the sheer popularity and flows and just attitude they brought to their music. So that was my only one from 1986. And we're going on 1987. And next we're going to go with another absolutely iconic song, Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody. There are quite a few Whitney Houston songs from the 80s, obviously, but this one, even though it is one of her most popular, it's for good reason. I never feel annoyed when this song comes on. It truly is a crowd pleaser because I feel like this is a song that plays at weddings a lot. It does. And whenever it comes on, I don't think I've ever seen anyone be like, oh gosh, this one again. Instead, everyone is so excited. They're so jazzed by it. They want to sing along to it. And I think it falls under the same category as Take On Me as just being one of those like ultimate joyous pick me up songs that I can turn to. Okay. Something big happened in 1987. Something big and bad happened. Michael Jackson's Bad album came out in 1987 and I feel like I've said this before in one of my Michael Jackson videos where I've ranked my favorite songs from him, that I find myself listening to Bad in its entirety more than Thriller. Both are fantastic albums, but something about that Bad album just... it is like exactly my cup of tea. So yes, I'm going to talk about the song Bad right now. I wish I could put his entire album, but obviously I can't do that. And I'm also going to talk about Man in the Mirror. Those are the two songs that I just had to mention because Bad is like, it is kind of like, I want to say a darker Michael Jackson, but it is definitely the edgier side of Michael Jackson, as Bad was in general. But I think coming off of Thriller and what his success was, it seems like he did a shift with his outward image to Bad, like going with more of the leather and zippers and all of that, darker, and just kind of transforming into a new era of his music, as I feel like he did with every album, quite honestly. I like it because if you were a fan of like Michael Jackson, say like Beat It, especially, this feels like a very appropriate follow-up to Beat It, where he's pushing it even more, adding a bunch of his iconic ad-libs in there and giving it a little bit more of a mood to it. I think it's just a fantastic Michael Jackson track. And Man in the Mirror is one of the absolute songs, like of my all-time songs. I'd probably put Man in the Mirror on the list. It's just like a classic pop ballad with the huge explosion at the end, and his ad-libs are just spectacular on it. But the message of the song is beyond empowering, and it's just a beautiful, timeless message for a song to have. Okay, you know what? I lied. I guess this next track is also from 87. I thought this was from 1988. So we've got a lot of tracks in 1987. What a year. And that is George Michael's Faith. I listed Wham in my last video, and a lot of that is just because I am a sucker for the sound of George Michael's vocals. And I said it in my previous 80s video, and I'm going to say it again here. He is one of those musicians that I feel so like devastated that I didn't get to see perform live. I really wish I would have been able to, because seriously, the vocal on Faith and once again, the delivery, I find so addictive to listen to combined with his tone, but it's really all about the emotion in his singing, because it's so tender at times and it's like grittier and forced, yet still trying to feel a little bit like restrictive whenever it's getting like gritty. Like, I don't know. It's just a really solid delivery. And I feel like George Michael was fabulous at using his voice as an instrument. So love Faith. Love how it's a bit more pulled back on the production side of things as well. Just feels like a very fresh track that will not really ever go out of style. Now I'm for real going into 1988. I guess I only have one song for the year 1988 now, and that is by New Kids on the Block. You got it, the right stuff. Now, I won't say New Kids on the Block were the very first boy band. I don't think that is correct, but they were a very popular boy band that I think is the reason that Backstreet Boys came about, NSYNC came about, just like the whole slew that came in through the mid 90s into the early 2000s. And this song in particular, it's very well known and iconic. Whether or not you like it or not, you have heard this song before. And I think just the overall appeal of New Kids and what they brought to the pop scene at that industry and the audience they were targeting, like, I just got to give credit where credit's due. I think it really helped push kind of the boy band thing full steam ahead for the next decade or so. This song's just very catchy, as it should be. They've got some solid harmonies and it's got some attitude. And it just kind of gave all the moods that I think their target audience would be so into at the time. My last song is for the year 1989, and I really felt the strong need to include this because I think this might be one of my top favorite songs from this band. No, I can say without a doubt, it's in my top 3, and that is What It Takes by Aerosmith. It is a sobby, sad power ballad, and I feel like, kind of like my last video, by the way, so many amazing rock songs came out of the second half of the 80s, and one I really wanted to include but couldn't, or else be pushing 11. But I'm just going to quickly say it. Sweet Child of Mine, Guns N' Roses. Nothing more needs to be said. What It Takes is a song that I personally have loved singing along to, listening to for many, many years. I feel like there was like a 4-year period a few years back where I felt like for some reason this song was on pretty heavy rotation no matter what mood I was in. I think I just love the drama of it because it is very dramatic. Whenever Steven Tyler is singing on a song, it is very easy to tell it is him because it's a very unique style voice. And I just love how, I think, committed to the drama this song is. It's just not afraid to be overly sad and overly swooping with this music arrangement, and I'm a sucker for it. There were a lot of songs in this back half of the 80s, and I wanted to make this list longer than 10 songs. So while I wrap up, I'm going to include some honorable mentions right here while I am talking. For example, Madonna had a huge time in the 80s, like so many Madonna songs. That was like her prime era. And although I will say I personally am not the biggest listener of Madonna's music, you still got to appreciate the impact she had, like so much impact. And like I said, Sweet Child of Mine, Guns N' Roses in general had a few great tracks. Bon Jovi had a lot of great tracks then, Def Leppard, Kiss. I mean, just so many bands. Like, I can't even get into the bands. I feel like that would have to be a whole separate video. And also Lionel Richie. Gotta love the music Lionel Richie was putting out in the 80s. I mean, seriously. But let me know what some of your favorite songs are from 1985 to 89, or if any of the songs I mentioned are songs that you also really enjoy. You can let me know that in the comments as well. And if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. And thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it till this point in the video. And until my next one, bye.